Most Americans never ask themselves this question. Can you actually lose your U.S. citizenship? It sounds like a conspiracy theory at first. After all, once you're a citizen, you've got the passport, the right to vote, the ability to work and live in the U.S. freely. Isn't that it? Case closed? Not exactly. Welcome to Travel Talk, where we explore the stories, policies, and legal realities behind borders and identity. And today, we're digging into something that most people, including lifelong Americans, never think about, but absolutely should. Here's the uncomfortable truth. U.S. citizenship, while one of the most powerful legal statuses on earth, is not untouchable. It can be lost. Not just by accident or paperwork error, but through deliberate legal pathways created by the federal government. And those pathways are active, being used, and affecting real lives right now. There are two primary ways someone can lose their American citizenship: voluntary renunciation and government-led denaturalization. The first one you might expect. The second, not so much. But before we go any further, let's rewind and lay the groundwork. Not all U.S. citizens are treated exactly the same in the eyes of the law. There are two distinct categories. Citizens by birth. These are individuals born on U.S. soil, including all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and U.S. territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Naturalized citizens. Those who were born outside the U.S., but went through the immigration and naturalization process to become American citizens. Both groups enjoy the same legal rights. They can vote, obtain a U.S. passport, and qualify for federal benefits. But when it comes to losing citizenship, the risk levels diverge sharply. If you're a natural-born citizen, you're almost entirely protected by the 14th Amendment. That means, unless the original birth documents were fraudulent, or you were part of a very rare case of organized identity fraud, your status is constitutionally secure. But if you're a naturalized citizen, your citizenship is not something you were born into. It's something you obtained through a legal process. And any process that can be done can also be undone, under the right legal conditions. So let's start with the most straightforward scenario. Voluntary renunciation. It might surprise you to learn that thousands of Americans give up their U.S. citizenship every single year. In fact, the U.S. government publishes a quarterly list of people who have officially renounced, and the numbers have been climbing steadily for over a decade. Here's how it works. To renounce, you must appear in person at a U.S. embassy or consulate outside the United States. You'll be required to sign an oath of renunciation, acknowledging that you understand the consequences, and that the act is irrevocable. As of 2025, the process also comes with a steep fee. Over $2,000. That's one of the highest renunciation fees in the world. Once you've renounced, the consequences are immediate and permanent. You lose your U.S. passport. You lose your right to vote in federal and local elections. You forfeit access to Social Security and other federal benefits. And if you ever want to return to the U.S., you'll need to apply for a visa, just like any other foreign national. So who would actually do this? Why would someone walk away from American citizenship? There are a few common reasons. Taxation. The United States is one of the only countries in the world that taxes based on citizenship, not just residency. That means if you live abroad but keep your U.S. citizenship, the IRS still wants a cut. For wealthy Americans or entrepreneurs living overseas, this can be a significant financial burden. Political or personal beliefs. Some individuals feel disillusioned with U.S. policy or government and want to sever formal ties. Others may be required to renounce in order to take on citizenship or a government role in another country. Lifestyle commitments. In many cases, people simply decide that their future is elsewhere. They've started families, businesses, or communities abroad and want their legal status to reflect that. But regardless of the reason, the renunciation process is permanent. There's no undo button. Once you give it up, you're no longer American, and you won't be treated like one under the law. Here's where things get even more serious, and a bit unsettling. What if you never wanted to give up your citizenship at all? Can the U.S. government take it from you against your will? The answer is yes. and it's called denaturalization. If voluntary renunciation is the door you walk through willingly, denaturalization is the one you're dragged through, often without warning. It's the lesser-known side of American immigration law, but it's very real. And if you're a naturalized U.S. citizen, it's something you need to understand, because the protections you think you have might not be as permanent as you believe. Let's be clear, the U.S. government can revoke your citizenship if it believes you never should have had it in the first place. This doesn't happen casually, and it's not automatic, but it does happen, and the legal basis for it is well established. So how does it work? Denaturalization is a civil process handled by the Department of Justice, DOJ. It's not part of the criminal justice system, meaning you don't have to be convicted of a crime to lose your citizenship. But it is still a federal legal process with real consequences. The most common reason someone is targeted for denaturalization is fraud or misrepresentation during the naturalization process. That could mean failing to disclose a criminal record using a false identity, lying about your immigration history, hiding political or military affiliations, especially with groups hostile to the U.S. concealing involvement in human rights violations or war crimes. Here's the part that catches most people off guard. There is no statute of limitations. That means the government can come after you 5, 10, even 30 years after you've become a citizen, if they uncover evidence that your application was dishonest or incomplete. In recent years, the DOJ has opened dozens, and in some years, hundreds, of denaturalization cases. They're not all headline news, but they are public record, and they follow a legal pattern that's been in place for decades. Let's talk about real examples. Case 1. A man from Bosnia was living quietly in the Midwest. He had become a naturalized citizen in the late 90s. But years later, U.S. officials discovered that he had participated in war crimes during the Yugoslav Civil War, and that he had intentionally omitted this information on his immigration forms. Result? His citizenship was revoked, and he was deported. Case 2. A former Nazi concentration camp guard, who had been living in the U.S. for over 50 years, was denaturalized when investigators proved he had lied about his past. He lost his citizenship and was removed from the country, even though his crimes happened during World War II, and his life in the U.S. had been quiet. The government still acted. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a long-standing federal effort to ensure that naturalized citizens gained their status legitimately. And fraud isn't the only thing that can trigger denaturalization. If you become involved with certain organizations or governments soon after gaining citizenship, your actions can also put your status at risk. For example, if you join a group that advocates for the violent overthrow of the U.S. government, if you serve in the military of a foreign government that is hostile to the U.S., if you take a senior role in a foreign government without notifying U.S. officials. These associations, especially within the first 5 years after naturalization, can raise serious red flags. The government may argue that your behavior shows you were never truly loyal to the United States, and that your naturalization was based on false pretenses. Let's say you never committed a violent act, but you were a public member of an extremist political group or served in a foreign regime that's on poor terms with the U.S. That alone could be enough to trigger a case. In legal terms, it's not always about what you did. It's often about what you hid, and what that says about your intent at the time of your application. Now let's talk about dual citizenship, because this is where many Americans and immigrants get confused. Yes, dual citizenship is legal in most cases. The U.S. doesn't formally encourage it, but it also doesn't prohibit it. You can be a U.S. citizen and simultaneously hold citizenship in Canada, Mexico, the U.K., and many other countries. However, and this is important, the U.S. government pays close attention to your intent. If you obtain foreign citizenship for normal reasons, like ancestry, marriage, or residency, that's usually fine. But if you take an oath to renounce allegiance to the U.S., or serve in a foreign government in a way that implies exclusive loyalty, you might be triggering legal risk, especially if you do this without telling U.S. authorities. In short, dual citizenship is allowed, but not if it undermines your commitment to the United States. The takeaway? The rules around denaturalization are stricter than most people realize. And even if you've been a citizen for decades, you could still be targeted if the government uncovers past fraud or recent actions that violate the terms of your naturalization. By now, you're probably wondering, how does this actually work? Who decides someone should lose their citizenship? Is there some government team out there just digging through old immigration files? The answer is yes, there is. Inside the Department of Justice, DOJ, there's a dedicated Office of Denaturalization within the Civil Division. Its mission? To investigate and build legal cases against people who may have obtained U.S. citizenship fraudulently. And they don't do it alone. They work closely with Homeland Security, DHS, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, IC. These agencies now use cutting-edge technology, biometric databases, AI-based pattern tracking, decades-old immigration records, global intelligence sharing agreements. That means someone who became a citizen in 1989 might still face an investigation in 2025 if new information comes to light. A past that seemed long buried can be unearthed and prosecuted. Here's how it works legally. Once the DOJ finds grounds to act, it files a civil complaint in federal court. This is not the same as being arrested, but it's serious. The person is notified and has a right to hire a lawyer, present evidence, and fight the case. But if the court agrees with the government, your citizenship is revoked, your passport is canceled, you lose the right to vote, and you're classified as deportable. You don't just go back to holding a green card, you become a removable alien under federal law. Now, what about people born in the USA? For natural-born citizens, the law is much tougher on the government. Under the 14th Amendment, if you were born on U.S. soil or to American parents abroad, your citizenship is constitutionally protected. It can't be revoked just because of political beliefs, associations, or foreign activity. But there is one very rare exception: fraud at birth. If your original birth certificate or identity was obtained fraudulently through fake hospital records, false parentage, or birth tourism schemes, the government can challenge your claim to citizenship. These cases are extremely rare and very hard to prove, but they've happened. The common theme in every single loss of citizenship case? Intent and deception. You can't lose your citizenship just because you said the wrong thing or changed your views. But if you lied, omitted crucial facts, or acted in ways that violate the terms of your naturalization, and the government can prove it, your status can be stripped, even decades later. So what's the bottom line? U.S. citizenship is one of the most powerful legal identities on earth. But it's not unconditional. If you're a citizen, especially a naturalized one, it's your responsibility to understand the law, be honest about your past, and avoid activities that might put your status at risk. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness. Because when it comes to citizenship, what you don't know can cost you everything.